Hi everyone, I'm Raven, and in this video we are going to be talking about different types of witches. Now, witches have been around for centuries, although witch influencer on Instagram or TikTok is something new. If we look back in ancient times, communities around the world would have had one or more wise people or healers who would have been called upon to share folk magic remedies for illness, crop protection, good weather, and sometimes, ironically, staving off the evils of witches. By the 16th century, a Christian-led obsession with the power of the devil and the need for vigilance against sin brought these wise people under the spotlight and deemed them guilty by association. And all of it was witchcraft. And then began a shameful chapter of witch persecution and execution through the 16th and 17th centuries. The Salem witch trials. The mid-20th century saw a positive revival of the term witch through the Wiccan movement in the US and in the UK, which spread into many feminist and goddess consciousness movements. Today, many people from many different spiritual traditions and cultures are reclaiming the word witch. Before I start talking about different types of witches, I would like to say that you don't need to have a name, especially if you are new into this craft. Naming yourself a type of witch will help others to understand what are you passionate about in this craft. But don't limit yourself. Names can give a lot of power, however, always be open to new information. Learn as much as you can, even if you decided to learn more about one subject, and your practice is based more on candle magic, for example. And I will give you an example here. Let's say I'm interested in working with herbs and healing. I like working with nature and I called myself a green witch. And in one day I became interested in astrology and would like to know more about planetary energies and maybe start working with the moon. But just because you already choose yourself a name, it doesn't mean that you can't learn astrology or even change your name. A name is not required in order for you to be a witch. Our practice is meant to expand. In my belief, we came on this plane to learn and grow. And so never limit yourself and never stop growing. And with that being said, here I will be mentioning 17 most known witch types in our witchcraft community. The first one being coven-based witch. And this is a type of witch who operates as part of a wider group of witches, perhaps led by a higher priestess, who combine their magic powers and skills to create stronger, bigger spells and manifest outcomes for the group and beyond. Covens focus more on ceremonial and ritualistic magic. The second type of witch is solitary witch, and this is a witch who works alone and under their own steam, rather than a group of other witches. A solitary witch can follow one particular branch of witchcraft or a combination. Crystal witch. Crystal witches are deeply connected to the vibration and power of crystals, gems, rocks, and stones. Cosmic witch. Cosmic witches are all about astrology and astronomy, and they are largely focused on the lunar energies of the moon cycles and spells that amplify or protect against celestial events. They are clued up on star signs and birth charts. Green witch.
Green witches love nature, work in healing, and they draw their power, tools, and rituals from the earth and the great outdoors, and use plant, flower, and herbal preparations as a primary source of spell ingredients.
Hedge witch. A hedge witch is similar to a green witch, but it is not solely focused on nature. A hedge witch works alone. They develop their own kind of magic, focusing primarily on creating healing remedies and often working with the elements, nature, and herbalism. The term hedge witch is an homage to the wise women of old, who often lived on the outskirts of villages beyond the hedge. A grey witch. Grey witches straddle the divine between positive and negative magic, using whatever suits the situation. They will use curses and hexes when the situation is calling for it. They typically seek justice and the correction of the unfair circumstances. They will often work with deities and spirits to help them in their practice. Eclectic witch. Eclectic witches tend to pick whatever practices, rituals, beliefs, or ideas feel natural and good to them in the moment. Baby witch. Baby witches, often used on TikTok, are simply beginner practitioners. Although I personally don't use this term, you will probably hear this term often used in our witchcraft community. A kitchen witch. In kitchen witchcraft, cooking becomes a magical activity. A kitchen witch might have a stovetop or countertop altar. There are probably fresh herbs in jars and pots, and magical practices are incorporated into recipes and cooking. A ceremonial witch. Ceremonial witches have many practices, but ceremonies and rituals are practices that they hold in specially high regard. Ceremonial magic is worked into the most of the elements of their practice. They likely work a ritual or ceremony into whatever they are casting or trying to accomplish. Ceremonial witches often call on specific beings and spiritual entities to assist them with whatever they are casting. Hereditary witch, and this is a witch that was born into witchcraft. This is a part of their family and or their lineage. Their magic and practice are passed down from previous generations, though they may work with their own individual practices as well or instead of their families. Hereditary witches must be born into witchcraft, but if you do not choose to practice witchcraft, you won't still be a hereditary witch. And I would like to add here that if none of your family practice witchcraft, it doesn't make you any less of a witch. Hereditary witches simply have passed down information from previous generations. Secular witch. They still cast spells, use crystals and herbs, oils and candles, but they don't attach spirituality to their magic. Secular witches don't worship a deity or a higher being. Their practice is entirely non-religious. They don't believe in the power behind energy in their work. This isn't to say that a secular witch can't be spiritual. It's simply that their work is not. The two are entirely separate. Elemental witch. Elemental witches study and practice based on the four elements: fire, earth, water, and air. An elemental magic is work based on honoring each element. She may have an altar for each specific element. Elemental witches call on the elements when casting spells or performing rituals. A sea witch. A sea witch has strong ties to water and the ocean, and uses that element often in her practice. Sea and ocean magic will often use sand, shells, driftwood, or other elements that come from that place. They would often work with sea spirits such as mermaids and so on. A traditional witch.
Traditional witches are witches who have a base in the old history of witchcraft and the old craft that came before Wicca. They take a historical traditional approach to their practice and often will study their ancestors or other folklore attached to witchcraft. Traditional witches want to honor the old ways of practicing their craft and will often focus on working with the local history and spirits of where they are or where they've come from.
Gardenian witch. Gardenian Wicca is a practice of witch that came about in the 1950s, and because of Gerald Gardner, often considered to be the father of Wicca, spread across the world. Those who practice Gardenian Wicca have strong ties to nature and have many rituals that are the foundation of their practice. Those are a few types of witches that you will often hear throughout our witchcraft community. And with that being said, I hope you find this video useful, and as always, I thank each and every one of you who made it this far, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!